Welcome. It's Foreign News O'Clock on All News Nigeria. I am Opeyemi Olugbemi. Now the headlines. 5 African countries not invited to African-US Summit. Fans go wild as Argentina make semifinals in World Cup. US lawmakers to ban TikTok over insecurity. Joe Biden signs bill recognizing same-sex marriage. Now the news in details. 5 African countries were not invited to this year's Africa-US Summit. While a majority of African nations invited to the summit taking place this week, 5 were not included. The summit tends to bring together leaders of 49 African countries as well as heads of the African Union to collaborate on key policy across climate change, security, and trade. Now, these 5 countries were not invited to Joe Biden's summit: Guinea, Sudan, Mali, Burkina Faso, Eritrea. Now, here could be the reasons these countries were excluded from African-US summit. The ruling government in Guinea was seized by a military junta in September 2021 and is now being led by Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. The military junta overthrew President Alpha Condé, who had won a controversial third term for office, despite term limits, which he claimed did not apply to him. Doumbouya agreed in October to hold new elections in about 2 years. Sudanese General Abdel Fattah Burhan toppled the government in October 2021, taking power during the Northeast African nation's transition to a democracy after 3 decades of authoritarian rule. Sudan's military leadership announced this month the first phase of an agreement to transition to a democracy, but some political groups have rejected the framework and discussions are ongoing. Millions of people in Sudan are in dire need of humanitarian assistance, a crisis that grew worse after the coup. Civilian demonstrators also frequently clash with security forces. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Junta seized power 2 years ago after leading a coup against the government. He failed to transition the West African country into new democratic elections and has now become a pariah to the international world. Mali also recently rejected help from French humanitarian groups, affecting hundreds of thousands of Malians who are in need of emergency food and medical assistance. Earlier this year, France, which had fought Islamic terrorist groups for 9 years in Mali, completed a withdrawal of troops from the country. Russian mercenaries in Mali have also been accused of murdering civilians in a growing concern for world leaders. Burkina Faso, located in West Africa, is in a dire humanitarian situation after suffering from 2 coups in less than 9 months. Troops in September ousted the ruling military leader, Lieutenant Henri Sandaogo Damiba, who had won control of the country through a January coup. A military leader appointed to replace him said Damiba had not done enough to control violence in Burkina Faso. More than 3,200 people have died in the African country from January to September, and nearly 5 million are in need of emergency assistance. Some women and children have been eating leaves and salt, according to the United Nations in October. The United States does not have formal ties with Eritrea, a country located in the Horn of Africa in the eastern region of the continent, so the nation's leaders were not invited. Eritrea has also been providing military support to neighboring Ethiopia, which is in the midst of a civil war against an opposing political faction in the region of Tigray. Eritrean troops are accused of the kidnapping, looting, and murder of civilians in Tigray, and the US has called for Eritrean soldiers to withdraw from the conflict. Justifying the exclusion, Senior Director for African Affairs at the National Security Council, Joe Devamont, said the United States wanted to respect the decisions of the African Unions and did not invite countries the AU has sanctioned, and is the case these countries were mentioned. On the other hand, Eritrea and Somaliland were excluded because they don't have diplomatic relations with the United States. On business news, the United States lawmakers have proposed to ban popular social media app TikTok, citing concerns about national security. The bipartisan bill is the latest move in the United States against the company, which is owned by Chinese tech giant ByteDance. In November, the head of the FBI voiced concern that China could use the app to influence users or control their electronics. Several U.S. states have banned it from government devices. TikTok, which has more than 100 million users in the United States, called the measure a politically motivated ban that would do nothing to advance the national security of the United States. The political attacks on TikTok are indicative of strained relations with the US and China. In the US, TikTok faced an effective ban 2 years ago following an executive order by Donald Trump barring new downloads, but judges blocked the measure and it never came into force. It was eventually revoked by President Joe Biden. Speaking of, Joe Biden has signed the same-sex marriage bill into law. On Tuesday, December 13, Biden signed the Respect for Marriage Act before thousands of invited guests on the South Lawn at an event the White House said reflected the importance of the moment. Among the guests invited to the bill signing of the White House were prominent members of the LGBTQ community and activists. The new law officially voids the Defense of Marriage Act, which defined marriage as between a man and a woman. It mandates that states honor the validity of out-of-state marriage licenses, including same-sex and interracial unions. As a senator in 1996, Joe Biden voted for the Defense of Marriage Act. The bill signing on Tuesday amounted to the culmination of his transformation on the issue. The bill passed in the House, with 39 Republicans joining Democrats in support, after getting through the Senate with 12 Republican senators. On sports, jubilant fans went wild at Lusail Stadium in Qatar on Tuesday as Lionel Messi drives Argentina 3-0 semi-final victory over Croatia. Millions of fans are celebrating the victory across the world. This is the 5th time Argentina has played in a World Cup semi-final, defeating the United States in 1930, Belgium in 1986, Italy in 1990, and the Netherlands in 2014. And it is the 6th time it has advanced to a final. The last time Argentina won the World Cup was in 1986. Argentina will play the winner of Wednesday's semi-final between France and Morocco on Sunday. Meanwhile, Croatia's World Cup tournament is not done yet. It will play in the 3rd place match on Saturday against the loser of tomorrow's semi-final. And we call it a day. To keep up with all news Nigeria, kindly follow us on all social media platforms displayed on the screen. We'll be back with more news updates tomorrow. Until then, stay tuned. Okoyemi Olubemi signing out.